Welcome everyone to another observability clinic. Today we are talking about a practical guide to SNMP monitoring with Dynatrace. It's a series of clinics we have done to show the extension to all framework and the different data sources we have available. And today it's SNMP and David is with me today. Hey David, how are you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Very good. Hey, SNMP, I know you will tell people a lot about what SNMP is, how it works, but
hmm
it's a very prominent data source, especially with our users that are using Dynatrace to monitor the infrastructures, I understand. And I think you are giving us an overview today, end to end, how to actually get SNMP metrics into Dynatrace using the extension tool framework. And
Yep.
yeah, I think with this, I shut up now and I'll pass it over to you, but I may have questions throughout the episode.
Okay. Yeah. Feel free to ask away.
Mhm.
So hi everyone. Like Andy said, I'm David Mass. I've been with Dynatrace about 10 and a half years. Um, Started it off as a consultant, and then the past few years have been helping with extensions. Quite a few extensions on the hub that you may be familiar with. But yeah, happy to talk with you
Mhm.
um, about SNMP extensions.
Mhm.
And so today, kind of two main topics, kind of an overview of SNMP and how it works within Dynatrace, and then we'll actually get into building an SNMP extension, going through the YAML and kind of discussing the different pieces and parts that we need
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
make it all work. So just kind of an overview of SNMP. So Simple Network Management Protocol is what it stands for. It originated back in the 80s to help with network monitoring, but also network device management. Um, if you're at all familiar with SNMP, or you may hear these other terms, MIBs and OIDs or OIDs. Um, so a MIB is a management information base. So basically a file that describes the different object identifiers, so OIDs, that we can either pull or that control something on the device. Um, there's a number of standard MIBs, so that's governed by the IETF. Today we'll be looking at a couple of OIDs that come from those MIBs that are kind of standard across the industry. But then are also I'll say vendor specific MIBs. So if you're working with a specific vendor, even a specific type of device, so a VPN or a firewall, those might have specific MIBs and thus specific OIDs
Mhm.
that we can pull.
Mhm.
So on the in the screenshots, we kind of have that an example of kind of a MIB and then the different OIDs that are a part of that. Um, that SNMP v2 MIB is one that's, I'll say, standard across pretty much all devices that I've seen. Where we can get a system description, uptime, the name of the device, who to contact, if there are any issues, where the device is located.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and then a bunch more information that we can kind of get into during the demo.
Mhm. Yeah.
For managing and monitoring devices, we can pull those network devices. The default port is 161. And then you may also be familiar with like SNMP traps. So this is more of those devices sending information to a trap receiver.
Mhm.
Um, and I can go over that in a little bit more detail on the next slide. But
Mhm.
that default port is 162.
Mhm.
Um, I will also note that it is UDP, so that's kind of the send and forget. So there's no guarantee with those.
This reminds me, thank you so much for that kind of memory refresher on my end. I
Yeah.
remember when I started, even before Dynatrace, when we did performance testing, SNMP was a primary data source, as you said, to get data from the routers and switches and everything. It's a great, this reminds me, like, obviously, as a dictionary of all the metrics. And then the traps kind of remind me now of what we would call webhooks, where you could, like, in more, let's say, in more modern technology, or when somebody uh, delivers or develops a service, and you can basically register webhooks to then proactively have a call to an external system. But that's a great summary. Thank you so much. That's a great
Awesome.
reminder of the technology.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, moving into kind of the more Dynatrace realm, the way things work is that we will create an extension using the EF2 framework, where we define the OIDs, or we can also use the names for those OIDs, and the data source will do that translation. Um, we then build and deploy that extension, and then the Dynatrace ActiveGate is what's actually doing the polling. So all of the extensions, SNMP extensions, will run remotely. We do support the V2C and V3, um, those different versions of
Mhm.
SNMP, and then the data source does a git bulk, so that's one of the SNMP commands on the OIDs that we define within the extension.
Mhm.
Um, like I was saying on the previous slide, we do have an SNMP traps extension. So this we can set up that extension to receive traps.
Mhm.
That's a little bit different than the topic that we're discussing today,
Mhm.
but that is also an option.
Mhm.
That we can put the link in
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
description.
We make sure, exactly. I just wanted to say, folks, if you are seeing any links here, you will also find them in the description of the video, whether you watch this on YouTube or Dynatrace University. Just look into the description of the video, and then we list all the links that David has put together. Cool.
Yeah, awesome. Um, and so we do already have a number of SNMP extensions already built that are available on the Dynatrace Hub that you may be familiar with. The F5 extension is quite popular, as well as the generic Cisco and generic network devices. But we also have extensions for Juniper devices, as well as Palo Alto devices. Um, and so you can go to the Dynatrace Hub, um, dynatrace.com/hub, and search for those. There you can also download the extensions, so you can see the YAML files, what we're about to dig into. But that can also give you a list of the OIDs that we're pulling, um, to get a better sense of, where the metrics are coming from. Just a little bit more about kind of what's required when we're setting up the extensions. So we do need a Dynatrace ActiveGate, specifically an environment ActiveGate that does have access to the devices that we're monitoring. Um, we'll also need to know, what device that we want to pull, whether that's the IP address or domain name, as well as the port. Like I said earlier, default is 161, but you know, if it is changed, then we can also change that within the configuration. Um, and then depending on which version of SNMP the device supports or is configured to use, we'd either need to know the community string, um, or, with SNMP v3, there's quite a number of different options that help with security. So whether that's using a username, password, different authentication protocols, we can put that into the the link in the description of what's all supported. So kind of getting into writing the extension. There's been a number of other clinics on the VS Code add-on, so we'll be using that today. That can help with schema validation as well as kind of the whole extension lifecycle process of developing and deploying the extension. And so now we'll get into actually building an SNMP extension. So if we hop over to VS Code, I just have a blank folder, blank directory. And the first thing, I'll assume that we already have the VS Code add-on set up. So I'm connected to a Dynatrace environment. I can bring up the command palette, Control-Shift-P or F1, and I can initialize my workspace. I'll choose a fairly recent version of the schema, version 286. I do have these schemas already downloaded, but I'll just re-download them. And then I do also have my certificates set up already. So similar to other declarative data sources, so SQL, WMI, when we build a custom extension, we sign that extension zip file so that way we can validate it both on the cluster side, the Dynatrace cluster side, as well as the either one agent or in this case, the active gate that the extension is going to be running on. And then we will just create a blank extensions 2.0 and the VS Code add-on will build out the directory structure as well as give us the extension YAML. So let me zoom in.
That's really cool. I just wanted to say, thanks for the team that built the Visual Studio Code extension because that makes things so much easier. You get the complete template and boilerplating done, and then you just need to fill in the blanks, and then with the code completion, and it's beautiful. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it makes life much easier. And so, we could keep the name My Awesome Extension, but in this case, I'll just switch that to like my first SNMP extension. Note that since we're building a custom extension, it does need to start with this custom colon. I'll just change the name. And then, if you've seen some of the other clinics, like the SQL data source or the JMX data source, the SNMP data source is very similar, where we have, the SNMP, and then we start building out the YAML. So first we need a group. So this kind of allows us to within the YAML, segment off different pieces of, our different metrics that we want to capture. So I'll just have one group, I'll just call it metrics. And then within that group, we have a number of different properties or attributes that we can add within that. I used control space. That allows the VS Code add-on to do the code completion. So I will say with SNMP, if we add dimensions to this group, all of those dimensions will also get added to any of the subgroups that are a part of this main group. So this can be helpful when we're wanting dimensions that are the same across, a specific device. So, if we were to look at, the hub extensions, some of those base dimensions that are used across all of the metrics um, are some of those standard OIDs that we were actually looking at within the presentation. So, information about the device's description, the contact, the location. So all of those can be helpful dimensions across, any metric that we're capturing. Um, so I do have those already set up, but the basic structure of the YAML, whether it be for a metric or a dimension, is that we specify this OID, the colon, and then the actual OID that we want to capture. And one cool thing about the VS Code add-on is that it does, if we define these OIDs correctly, it does bring in information about that specific OID. So we can see this is indeed the system description. It gives us a kind of a short description and then also a link to where it's pulling that information.
Cool. That's nice because that means it's much easier also to not make a mistake. But I didn't know that there's an online database. Makes a lot of sense. So this the code plugin is just validating whatever you write here, that this is a valid OID, or if it is a standardized OID, it just queries the data and the description. That's cool.
Yeah. There's quite a lot of validation that the VS Code add-on does, and I can show that in a little bit. But yeah, so we have some of these standard dimensions. I'll just copy and paste that. But here we have the system contact, the system name, and the system location. It's all coming from this same MIB file. But yeah, we can hover over the OIDs and just validate that we're capturing it correctly. We can also define metrics. So I'll just add a metrics section. And in this case, I really only want to capture one metric, which would be the device's uptime. So this can be helpful to know, well, one, that the device is up, but also, if there are any restarts, we can create dashboards or alerts, metric events, things like that, based on that metric. So I will just name my metric uptime, or SNMP device uptime, and then the OID is actually this one right here. So we can see, that just make sure that the OID is correct. By default, so there are two different types of metrics. We have gauge type metrics. So this would be the actual value of the whatever is in the response. So in this case, the uptime will be increasing, but we don't want or we want to know that it is staying up. So we'll capture this as the type gauge. And the other type is type count, and that I can get into with this next section. But basically, counts are the delta between the previous capture and our most recent capture. So this can be helpful for a monotonic counters. So counters that ever increase. to actually get the true value of whatever the metric is, instead of seeing for example, if there's a number of errors, we have 1,000 errors, and then the next time we have 1,002 errors. We really don't care about that extra 1,000. We just care about the delta. So
Difference, yeah.
the
Yeah, makes a lot of
exactly.
sense. Yeah, I think this is also true for other data sources that are out there where you can
Yeah.
basically specify it's the total value, and therefore you want to get the difference between two measure points, or whether it's just always the current value. Nice.
Um, yeah. I guess one other thing that I will mention, as this is um, fairly common, is this interval property. So interval, we by default, the active gate will pull for these OIDs every minute, but we can also specify this interval in minutes. I'll just keep it at the 1 minute, but you could change it. I want these every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, that sort of thing. Um, the next section, and this is a little bit, I'll say, not trickier, but a little bit more, requires a little bit more of an understanding of how SNMP works, is capturing information from tables. So if we hop back a couple slides, we can see that in this MIB file, we have this sys_or table. So tables within SNMP, I guess you can kind of think about them the same as SQL database tables, where you have an index, and then a number of different columns, or different metrics associated with that line or row, or in this case, index. So with everything that we've looked at previously, there's just been one instance of those OIDs. So there's only one system description or one system name. But in this case, or in this example, we could have one or more indexes, and thus, one or more OR descriptions or uptimes. So this kind of plays into the next set of metrics that we would want to capture, which would be maybe interface, or network interface metrics. And so in this case, we would specify that we're capturing data from a table. And so because, like I was saying earlier, because we want these dimensions to be a part of all of the metrics that we're capturing, I'm just going to add this as a subgroup. So within this subgroup, I will add a name. So like interface metrics. And then within this subgroup, we can say table is true. So this tells the active gate, or the SNMP data source, that instead of capturing a specific OID, something that ends in 0, we want to go through that table and capture everything that's within that table. And so I like to start with dimensions, but it doesn't really matter if we start with dimensions or metrics. But in this case, we want to make sure that each interface that we're capturing is a unique data point within Dynatrace. And so one way to do that is to make sure the dimension includes the index of that table. So within this interface MIB, I know that we have this index OID.
Mm-hmm.
And one way to think about it is OIDs that end or that have 0 at the end, we'll capture that one instance. But for table-based metrics or dimensions, we'll have just this,
Mm-hmm.
the OID, and then within the device, you could have a number of different indexes at the end of this OID. So if you're doing an SNMP walk or something like that, you may see this base OID and then a number of rows that have various indexes, and that those will all match within that single table.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so just to add some more information, so this index, usually the index is just an integer, which has no real meaning other than keeping track of the different interfaces. But we do also have this interface description. So this will be the name of the NIC or the interface that will help give a more human or friendly name to those interfaces. And then we also have some statuses that are available within the that interface MIB, the admin status and the operational status. These can give some information whether the interface is up or down, both at admin level and a operational level. This can be helpful for alerting. We can use these to say, if the admin status is up or the operational status is down, then we may have a problem because we want that interface up, but it's not operating up, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And so these dimensions will again be added to the metrics that we want captured. There are a number of different metrics in that interface table, but maybe I'm only interested in capturing errors to make sure that I'm not receiving or sending any errors. So within that table, I know that this .14 and .20 are the incoming errors and the outgoing errors.
Mm-hmm.
And then like we were talking about earlier, these counters are ever increasing, until the device is restarted. So we want to specify the count, and this will give us that delta between the previous as well as the current and the previous metric values.
Mm-hmm. So David, to sum it up, what we are building here is an extension that, for instance, applied to a router would first capture the general information about the router, the dimensions that you had in the first group, with contact name, location, and a metric for that router, let's say uptime. And because a router has multiple network interfaces, this is where the table comes in. There's a table that SNMP provides, and the table contains multiple rows, one row per network interface. And that table has, again, dimensions, what network interface index, what's the description, what's the admin status and the operation status, and then obviously metrics like how many errors. I guess there's other things too, like how many bytes were sent and received. But did I get this right? I think this is really, it's well structured, but it makes a lot of sense to me if I got this correct, if I explain it correctly back to you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. And then we could just go on adding the different metrics that,
Mhm.
other metrics that we would want to capture.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
like you were saying, incoming, outgoing packets or bytes,
Mhm.
or, if there's anything specific for those devices that we want to capture, um, we would just add those
Mhm.
OIDs the same way.
Cool. No, just wanted to confirm that
Awesome.
I
Yeah,
understood
yeah,
it correctly. Yeah, perfect.
awesome. Um, so yeah, so once we have all of the metrics and dimensions that we want to capture um, all set up, we will use the VS Code add-on, or I'll use it to build the extension. So this Dynatrace extension's build, and I will upload it to my Dynatrace tenant and activate it. So this will make sure that that version is the one that I'm running on. If I copy this name and flip over to my tenant, I can search. I might need to refresh. And I can see that my first SNMP extension is there with the active version. And if I go into that extension, I can add a configuration. I do, so first when we're going through this configuration, you'll select which ActiveGate groups you'll want to run this on. I'll just run it on this Windows group. And then this is what I was talking about previously with, the device information that we would need to make sure that we have. So I do have something running on my local host on a different port, and then I will just change this community string. Um, I'll get into this advanced section in the troubleshooting guide. We can talk about that more there. And then to give this a description, I'll just do SNMP and save this. So what this will do is, go out to the active gates in that group, make sure that the extension can run from there, validate the certificate and signatures, and then start polling for those metrics um, and dimensions that we configured. Well, um, that may take a minute or two to point in or to start going. One thing that I will say is that um, similar to the other data sources, one helpful feature within the YAML is we can define feature sets. So feature sets allow us to toggle on and off which metrics we want to capture per configuration. Um, so like you were saying before, maybe we're capturing some information from our router, and then maybe we also want to monitor a switch that has some different metrics. So we can, if we wanted to define specific metrics or specific MIBs that might be on um, one device versus another, and split them up into feature sets. So in this case, if I wanted to um, be able to toggle on and off these interface metrics per configuration, I could add this feature set um, within there, and then at configuration time be able to say, do I want to capture interfaces? Or do I not want to capture interfaces? In that case, if we toggle that off, then we would only capture the uptime um, as that's in the default feature set, which is always enabled.
Yeah, I've seen this, as you said, others do as well in the other clinics. I think it's a really nice way to group metrics together and then you can toggle them. Maybe for certain devices in a certain data center, you want to have all the information, so you toggle them on. For certain devices in other areas, you may not want it. You may just want to have the high level uptime. And then it's a really nice thing that you can do this through the configuration. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Some um, so just checking on how things are doing. We see this error. We can actually hop into um, the extension health, and if we scroll down, we can see the different logs. Um, this error is coming from the failed to assign this monitoring configuration, and that's only because the extension needs to be downloaded
Mhm.
from the Dynatrace cluster. So it'll show this error, but as we can see, through these other log messages, um, it was successfully assigned, and we can see the my device was queried successfully.
Mhm. I think we had the same thing with the SQL extension and same
Yeah,
explanation. So it's just the first time it's not downloaded. Could be good feedback to the product team to actually say, do we even need this error? Or can we at least, because it could potentially, lead people into troubleshooting, even though there's no troubleshooting necessary. Because I guess the status is good now, even though I guess if you,
yeah,
what will it go away if you refresh it?
yeah. It may take a little bit to
Mm-hmm.
update, but yeah, it should
Mm-hmm.
eventually start showing that as status okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then just to verify, the quickest way, we can go into the Data Explorer. And if we search for SNMP device uptime,
Mm-hmm.
so this is where we can see all of those dimensions that we um, added. So we can see the system contact, the description. I'll just do the name. And if we run this query, we
Mm-hmm.
can see that my device is just named network device.
Mm-hmm.
But that, yeah, we get the uptime. And then we can also just verify those interface metrics. So this in and out. And here, so again, we get those global dimensions that were added, but also the ones that are specific to that group.
Mm-hmm.
So we get let's just split by description. So this will be the human friendly name. And because there will be quite a few,
Okay,
we
cool.
can see the different interfaces, and then that counts for the number of errors incoming and outgoing.
Mhm. Cool. And just out of curiosity, obviously you're using the Data Explorer here, but the metrics are also in Grail. So that means we can obviously put
Yep.
them on a dashboard on a notebook using also the new metric explorer that we have there. Yeah, perfect. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, everything making sense so far?
Yeah, it
Kind
does.
of,
It makes a lot of sense. It was, as I said, a great refresher of SNMP. It's really nice to see that it's very similar to all the other data sources. It's just the only thing that is different is you start with SNMP in your
yeah.
JSON instead of SQL or JMX, basically, right? And but then it's the same concept. Um, Obviously, you had the OIDs here because you are picking them from a like the standards that are out there. I
Yeah.
see here import files. Can you also import MIB files? Is this also supported, it seems, by the extension here, by the Visual Studio extension?
Hmm. Yeah, so we can, if you have a specific vendor MIB or something like that, uh, we can, yeah, import those MIBs. I don't have an example
That's fine.
at the
Yeah.
moment,
Yeah.
but yeah, and so that will help with validation as well as allow you to use. So like in this case, this sysdescript script is the name of
Mm-hmm.
the OIDs. So
Mm-hmm.
we could, um, you know, use this as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if you have a vendor specific MIB, maybe that's not out on the internet or in the public database, um, you can, um, they can help with that as well.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
There are, so um, you can also include those MIB files within the extension. So if we were to add, I believe we can just add in this extensions folder, I believe it's MIB or MIBs.
Mm-hmm.
Within here, we can add those MIB files, and then when the extension is built, those vendor-specific MIBs will be packaged within the extension.
Awesome.
Um, you can also put those directly on the ActiveGate. So you would need to make sure that the ActiveGates, all of the ActiveGates within the group you want to do there's the configuration for,
Mm-hmm.
um, you can put those MIB files on there. And that's all in the documentation that
Mm-hmm.
we can link to. Um, but that can also be helpful for name resolution as well as, in this case, some of these statuses, when they're returned from the SNMP device or the network device, they come back as status 1, but without the translation, you really don't know what 1
Yeah. Yeah.
means.
Yeah. 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 Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Cool.
So that can be really helpful as
Yeah.
well.
Cool. So basically, you walked us through a full example of building an SNMP extension from scratch, pulling data from one of your local SNMP data sources that you have on your Windows machines. Anything else on this? Or I think you also had some troubleshooting left, or what else is that
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. So say you get all of your extensions set up with all of the OIDs that you want to capture, but then you kind of run into some issues. Um, First, I would make sure that there is actual network access
Mhm.
between the active gate or active gates and the network device. So maybe you just have opened one, um, opened up a firewall rule or added one for one of your active gates, but not all of them within that group. That may be causing issues. I would also then verify that the device is responding um, to those OIDs. So that can be done either, if you're running on Linux, you can use SNMP walk or SNMP git. There are some third-party executables for Windows. But I will also mention that the SNMP data source, so this is the executable that actually goes out and pulls the network devices, based on the configuration um, and the extension YAML, has a built-in health check mode. And so if you find where the executable is um, and run the dash dash help command, you can get a list of all of the options that are available, as well as some examples of how to run an SNMP walk or get using the actual executable that the extension would use. Um, and then the kind of the final piece, um, what I mentioned when I was doing the configuration, within the configuration, there are some advanced settings. So if we were to drop that down, we can get some um, more configuration options specific to the device that we have configured. So whether that be the timeout, the number of retries. So like we were talking earlier, because it's UDP, there may be some some issues, making sure that those packets are actually get from the device to the active gate, as well as some more SNMP specific configurations. So this max repetitions. So this controls how many rows are returned if we were querying a table. So this can help tune to make sure that on the device side, we're not asking for too much data at one time, or we're asking for more data than it might be able to respond with. And
Yeah.
then that final option is the max OIDs per query. So again, that can help tune to make sure that we're polling at a correct interval
Mhm.
or correct load
Mhm.
for whatever network device we're gathering data from.
Mhm. Cool. Yeah, these are all great settings for bulk retrieval because obviously we are
Mhm.
retrieving things in bulk, and it's great to know that we have all these settings in the advanced settings. Yeah. Thank you.
And then yeah, just some final links, links to the documentation and the other clinics
Mhm.
for for the same series.
Mhm. David, I got a question for you. If you maybe go
Yeah.
back to the last slide, so we have something up on the screen. Two questions for you actually, because similar questions came up I believe, in the JMX extension. Um, it's great to know how easy it is to create these extensions with the Visual Studio plugin that we have. But is there anything, and maybe you don't know this, but I want to ask you, is there anything planned where maybe people can just with point and click create SNMP extension just by defining the OIDs in Dynatrace without having to go through an extension? So more like a generic extension that allows you to just define OIDs in the Dynatrace UI. Do you know if anything of that is planned?
Yeah, I believe something is planned, at least I'll say on our Dynatrace platform.
Hmm.
Um, I know that we've talked about building an application that allows kind of that more UI-driven way of building an extension
Hmm.
for both SNMP, but hopefully other data sources as well.
Hmm. Cool. And then the other thing that I wanted to ask was just like a confirmation because you showed today how you can define SNMP, the data source, and all the other concepts of extensions 2.0, meaning defining alerts, defining screens. All of this also works just the same as we've seen from JMX, from SQL, and just in the general extension 2.0 introduction. So all the concepts are the same. Um, and it doesn't matter if the data comes from JMX, SQL, or in your case, SNMP.
Correct. Yeah.
Cool.
So within that YAML, we can define the topology. So define, what entities we want created from these metrics, the relationships between them,
Mhm.
um, and screens, as well as, include dashboards and alerts, and
Perfect.
yeah, everything else.
Cool, cool. So folks, if you're interested in that, please make sure to really watch some of the other videos because this has been covered. Also, documentation, all of the links that you see here will be part of the description. Good. David, anything else that we missed?
I think that's all that I had.
Cool. Perfect. Thank you so much. As I know I repeat myself, but it was a great reminder for me on technology that I've used 20 years ago when I did my first steps around load testing, and we were pulling in data from SNMP into our load testing analytics tool. It's great to see that Dynatrace obviously has SNMP as a first-class citizen data source, and we make it easy through the extension framework to define what metrics, what data you want to get out from SNMP. Thank you so much, David.
Yeah,
Until
thank
the
you.
next time. Yeah.
Yeah, have a good day.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.